Princess Lila and the Sky Whale, the Curious Princess. In the airborne kingdom of Aurelia, the heavens weren't just blue, they shone like sapphires. The clouds below were soft and thick as pillows, and the castles didn't reach the ground, they floated, drifting slowly through the air like ships on a sea of wind. In one such castle, which was spiral seashell-shaped and starred with paint, lived a 10-year-old girl, Princess Lila Starling. But she was not a typical princess. All the princesses in the books wore glass slippers and sang to doves. Lila had leather boots, chased sky mice with her talking kitten, and could swing from the chandelier without spilling tea. She had storm cloud-colored hair and starlight twinkling eyes, and a heart that longed for adventure. Princesses are meant to be curious, she told Muffin one morning, when they were crouching under the banquet table to avoid etiquette lessons. That's how things get discovered. Muffin, a chubby white kitten with purple eyes and an enigmatic accent, no one was quite sure where he got it, rolled his eyes. Curiosity, my dear, is how one falls off floating cliffs. Mark my words, adventure only looks beautiful until it bites you. But Lila wasn't listening. Her gaze had strayed to the tallest tower of the castle, where no one was allowed to go, especially not little princesses. The royal attic had been sealed for generations, shut off with cobweb-covered chains and warning signs like "Danger, Old Magic," and "Do not enter, unless you wish to be turned into a turnip." Naturally, Lila was bursting to get inside. So that afternoon, as the castle buzzed with preparations for her parents' annual cloud ball, she slipped away. Wrapped in her invisible cloak, which wasn't, in fact, invisible, but did blend well with curtains, Lila snuck past the guards, climbed 200 spiral steps, and reached the iron-banded attic door. She pulled out a hairpin. Click! The lock screeched open like an old owl. The door creaked slowly out. Dust devils danced in the air. Old furniture was piled in slanted stacks. Spiderwebs hung between portraits. Strange trinkets winked and glowed faintly out of the darkness as though they remembered things. Lila's eyes scanned the room. That was when she saw it. A small chest buried beneath a stack of worn spellbooks. Whales and stars decorated it. Her fingers tingled as she brushed it off and undid the clasp. Within, wrapped in velvet, lay a scroll. She unrolled it carefully. It was old, hand-drawn, and glowed softly in the light. A trail of stars curved through clouds, around whirlwinds of air, and ended at something vast and whale-shaped hanging in the sky. In curving script were the words, "The Path to the Sky Whale." Lila's heart skipped a beat. She pressed a hand to her chest. "A sky whale," she breathed. "That's not in any of the storybooks." During dinner, Lila couldn't get the map out of her head. As nobles spun and waltzed at the cloud ball, she sat silently beside her plate of glitterberry cake, her thoughts 1,000 miles away. What was the sky whale? Why had no one ever spoken of it? Where did the map lead? "Your Highness," a courtier asked, "you seem distracted. Shall I fetch you more cake?" But Lila barely heard him. That evening, as the stars sang lullabies to the kingdom, Lila opened her window and held the scroll up to the moonlight. The ink shimmered silver blue, like something alive. And she knew, tomorrow, while everyone was still asleep before etiquette lessons, before tutors, before anyone could stop her, she was going to follow the map. She was going to find the sky whale. The next morning, long before the castle bells tolled in the dawn, Princess Lila was already awake. She had filled her little leather satchel with essentials. A starfish-shaped compass, although it circled in loops more than it pointed the way. Half a loaf of honey bread. A flask of bubbleberry juice. A lantern that glowed with gentle firefly light. Her wooden sword. Cloud cutter, just in case there were pirates. And of course, the ancient scroll. She tiptoed across the marble floor, still in her soft slippers. Outside her window, the world was wrapped in a sleepy pink mist. Most of Aurelia was still dreaming, even the floating castles drifted slower in the early morning hush. As she reached for her boots, something soft and furry batted her bag. "You're sneaking out, aren't you?" said a sleepy voice. Lila spun around. Muffin was on her pillow, blinking suspiciously, whiskers a twitch. "I'm not sneaking," she protested innocently. "I'm investigating." Muffin yawned. "Do investigators usually run away before breakfast?" Lila sat beside him. "Muffin, I found something amazing. A map. It goes to something called the Sky Whale." The kitten's ears perked. "Sky Whale? That's just an old cloud legend." "Then why is it on a scroll in the attic?" she demanded. Muffin muttered. "Because attic things are usually dusty and mysterious?" Lila stood, strapping her satchel across her chest. "I'm going to follow it, just for a little while. I'll be back before dinner." Muffin sighed. "Not without me. You're not." 10 minutes later, they stood in the Pegasus Tower, where the royal flying horses were kept. Rows of cloud stables floated gently in the air, each one holding a majestic winged creature. Lila dashed toward the last stall, the one containing her favorite. "Nimbus," she whispered. From out of the mist came a beautiful white pegasus with a silver mane and hooves that shone like icicles. His wings were wide and powerful, and his eyes sparkled like shooting stars. He whinnied upon seeing her. "Another adventure, Princess?" Lila smiled and hugged his neck. "The biggest one yet." Seconds later, they were airborne over the floating kingdom, over the towers of the palace, over the tallest trees rooted in the cloud soil. Muffin clung to his shoulder like a fuzzy scarf, claws tight. The morning wind tugged at her hair as they flew over shimmering lakes and fields filled with drifting blossoms. Below them, the kingdom broke up into tendrils of white and glints of gold. Above them, endless sky. And ahead of them, the unknown. They had not flown far when something flashed in the distance. Lila thought at first it might be sunrise light on clouds. But as they approached, she saw that they were birds, not just any birds, but brilliant, glowing birds with feathers of fire. "Firebirds," she whispered. The flock moved like a school of fish through the air, their bodies trailing sparks behind them. One of them, curious, flew up beside Nimbus. Its eyes were hot coals, but it chirped like a songbird. Muffin's fur stood on end. "Friendly or flammable?" "They're staring at us," Lila said, holding tight. Suddenly, the firebirds turned and swept forward, braiding together in midair, leaving a trail of burning feathers behind. "They want us to follow," she exclaimed. Nimbus snorted. "I hope they don't fly us into a volcano." But follow them they did. The firebirds led them up and up, until the clouds thinned and the air turned cold. They passed through floating ruins, broken remnants of ancient cities that drifted aimlessly through the air. Birds perched on marble columns that had no roof. Vines crept over pieces of staircases that led nowhere. And there at the edge of it all was something Lila had never seen. The world just stopped. One moment, they were flying through the air, and the next, there was simply nothing. A wall of glittering wind rippled at the edge of the world, shining with strange colors, blues, purples, and silvers. The firebirds flew up to it and vanished through the glimmer. Lila swallowed. "The map says we go through." Muffin curled his tail around her arm. "You know I don't like magical walls, do you?" "Hold on," she said to him, gripping Nimbus's reins. "We're going in." Nimbus closed his wings and plunged. The sky blurred around them. There was a second of complete silence. Then, whoosh! They broke through the curtain and into an entirely new sky. The air was lighter. The clouds below them were darker and slower moving, boiling like whirlpools. Above them, the sky was no longer blue. It was deep violet, speckled with bright, floating lights that looked like stars. Even though it was daytime, Lila's breath caught in her throat. They had passed out of the known world, and now the real adventure had begun. The air in this new sky was strange. It caressed Lila's skin and caused her hair to float gently, as though the wind itself was sharing secrets. Below, the clouds were darker, churning like the currents in the deep ocean. Above, shimmering stars winked in a sky that wasn't supposed to have stars in the daytime. And directly in front of them, as the map had predicted, was something remarkable. A great coil of cloud stretched across the sky like a living storm. It was not fierce, it was mesmerizing. The clouds hummed, low and otherworldly, as they turned. The humming was not quite music. It was rather like dozens of gentle voices humming different lullabies all at once. Nimbus paused. That is not normal. It's the maze of singing clouds, Lila whispered, checking her scroll. We have to go through it. Muffin gazed at the cloud spiral. Through? What's wrong with around? Around is safe and nice and wonderfully dull. But Lila's heart was pounding with excitement. This was what she dreamed of, a sky full of impossible places. She nudged Nimbus forward. The cloud wall opened, and they entered. Abruptly, the air became thick with wind. Music swirled around them like a fog. Clouds traveled in layered paths, some softly luminous, others pulsing like jellyfish. Whenever they passed through one, it sang a different song. The first cloud sang in rhymes. Follow the breeze that hums like bees, or lose your path among the seas. The second cloud whispered, to left or right, the stars won't say, but one way leads the heart astray. Lila looked into the mist. They're giving us riddles, instructions, or nonsense, Muffin muttered. Nimbus whinnied, I don't like this. Winds are changing. Indeed. The air seemed to tug and nudge in different directions. Easy to get confused. Several times they flew in circles without realizing. Then they reached the third cloud, shaped like a winged lion. It gently roared, I float yet have no wings. I can weep without eyes. What am I? Lila straightened up. A riddle. I know this one. It's a cloud. The lion cloud smiled, then dispersed into mist, revealing a clear path forward. That's it, she said. We have to solve them to pass through. Farther into the labyrinth, the puzzles became harder and the clouds stranger. There was one with eyes upon eyes that blinked in turn. Another one whistled like a tea kettle when they failed, puffing them in a spinning blast backward. At one moment, the mist became so thick, Lila couldn't see her hand before her face. That's when they appeared, the fog foxes. 6 of them. They were tall, misty creatures with smoky ribbon tails and gleaming blue eyes. They circulated around Nimbus, looking at Lila and Muffin with silent interest. One of them stepped forward and spoke to her, not aloud, but in Lila's mind. Who dares to venture into the cloud maze? What do you seek, Sky Child? Lila presented the scroll. I seek the sky whale. The fox creature narrowed its eyes. Few pursue it. Fewer attain it. Why should we lead you? Lila straightened up. Because I'm not afraid. Because the sky must be explored. Because I think it's real. The other foxes tilted their heads. Then suddenly, one yipped a bark, a laugh. Very well, courageous heart. Solve one final riddle and we shall lead you. The chief fox's eyes sparkled. I rise and fall but never sleep. I pull the tides and secrets keep. What am I? Lila thought hard, hesitating. Muffin whispered urgently. The tides, secrets, sleep. Then her face lit up. The moon! The fox bowed and smiled. Follow us, Moon Tamer. The fog foxes darted ahead, their smoky tails curling through the maze like silver ribbons. Lila and Nimbus followed close, Muffin tight against the wind. They sailed past a glittering whirlpool of cloud that wailed a sorrowful lullaby. The foxes yipped quickly, steering them off course. Finally, the clouds began to thin. The music faded. And then silence. They burst out of the last spiral and into a stretch of clear, twilight sky. Something glimmered in the distance, huge and silver, drifting slowly across the heavens like a floating island. Lila gasped in awe. "Is that?" But before she could utter the words, the fog foxes vanished like smoke in sunlight, with one mist feather left behind. Muffin stared at the shape in the distance. "That's not a whale. That's a floating mountain." Nimbus, in awe, whispered just loudly enough to be heard. "That is the sky whale." It glowed with moonlight, its body enormous and serene, moving through the air with the quiet elegance of a dream. Small lights twinkled along its sides like stars or windows. Lila's heart thudded like a drum. The map was right. The legend was real. But even as she reached for her scroll, something blazed beneath the whale. A dark form, angular, moving fast. Ships. Ships with black sails unfurled and hooks trailing from their sides. Muffin snarled low, hackles raised. "Lila, I think someone else beat us to the whale." Lila seized Nimbus's mane, her eyes fixed on the shape swimming through the clouds. The sky whale. It was even more beautiful up close, a creature the size of a city, its enormous body glowing with starlight. Thin strips of what seemed to be ancient runes glittered on its back. Its massive flippers churned slowly, waving the clouds below it like gentle tides. A song low and powerful pulsed from its center, like a heartbeat made of music. Trouble was already here, though. Below, the whale circled 3 skyships lean, mechanical devices with whirring propellers and jagged sails. From the decks, Lila could hardly make out dark figures in cloaks and metal goggles. "Sky pirates," Muffin growled. "The rude kind." One of the ships fired a glowing hook it clamped onto the side of the whale with a clang. Another shot a net of sparkling magic. The sky whale let out a low, mournful moan. "They're trying to catch it," Lila whispered, her fists clenched. "We have to stop them." Nimbus snorted, wings spreading wide. "Then let's show them what a princess and her pegasus can do." They dived in close, wind whipping around their ears. Lila had no armor, no army, just a sack of snacks, a wooden sword, and a kitten with attitude. It would have to do. "I need to get on that ship," she told Muffin, indicating the largest. "You need a better plan," Muffin said, wrapping his tail around her arm. Too late. Nimbus dived a splash of white amidst storm-colored clouds, and Lila leaped. She slammed onto the deck, rolling to her feet even as startled pirates turned to stare. "A princess?" One of them blinked. "Did she just get onto our ship?" Lila raised her sword. "Release the sky whale." The pirates erupted into laughter. So Lila swung her wooden sword and hit a glowing lever. Alarms wailed. Sparks fell around them. "Oops," she said. The ship tilted sideways. Suddenly, out of the clouds, came a white streak Nimbus, kicking a barrel into 2 pirates before landing beside her. Muffin leapt down with a hiss, claws out. The deck erupted into chaos. While Nimbus kept the pirates busy, and Muffin scrambled across ropes chewing through wires, Lila made a dash for the hook controls. The magic line mooring the ship to the whale glowed with an intense light pulsating with power. She tugged on the controls. Nothing budged. "Too strong," she muttered. She recalled the scroll then. Lila pulled it out and unrolled it, and now, the runes down the whale's side matched symbols on the map. She placed the scroll over the glowing control crystal and whispered, "I come with a curious heart. I seek not to harm, but to understand." The crystal pulsed, then faded. The hook shattered. The ship wrenched free, spinning away. Below, the sky whale raised its enormous head and for the first time looked straight at her. Its eye was a galaxy, countless stars swirling in dark blue. And in her heart, Lila heard a voice. "You listened for my song. You followed the wind. You chose courage over fear. Then it opened its back, not with bones or fins, but with doors. Floating stairs appeared, made of glittering cloudstone, curling downward into the whale itself. Muffin fell beside her, panting. "If it swallows us, I'm blaming you for eternity." "Not swallowed," Lila whispered. "Invited." There was magic within the whale. Endless chambers carved out of starlight. Shelves of books suspended in mid-air that changed by themselves. Paintings that walked off their canvases. Waterfalls of silver ink. And at the center, a shining nucleus, a sun wrapped in crystal where ancient voices whispered hymns of forgotten skies. "This is," Lila's breath caught, "a sky library, a living one. I hold the sky's dreams." The whale's voice sounded within her. "I have the memory of 1,000 kingdoms, but my memory dies. I needed a new keeper." Lila looked around. A room full of stories, of charts, of stars, of wonders. Not to keep, but to share. "I'll make you remember," she promised. "I'll keep your stories. I'll tell them." The whale's heart warmed. "Then my journey can continue." When Lila returned to Aurelia days later, the entire kingdom gasped. She was covered in cloud dust, her boots charred, her hair tangled with sky vines. She sat on the back of the sky whale itself, as it glided low over the city in quiet majesty, glowing with moonlight. The queen and king hastened to welcome her. "My star," her mother breathed. "Where have you been?" Lila smiled. "I tracked a map," she said, "and found a library inside a whale." They all thought she was joking until the whale gently spoke and dropped one glittering book onto the palace steps. 1 year later, Lila did more than become a princess. She became the Sky Keeper, a teller of tales, a keeper of the old songs, and the first explorer to chart the unseen winds. Children came to see her every week in the castle gardens and hear her tell stories of fog, foxes, singing clouds, riddles, firebirds, and the time Muffin once inadvertently ate an entire floating pancake village. And when the wind was blowing just right, and the clouds parted over the tower, you could see a glimpse of a great silver shape flying through the stars. Still searching, still learning, and always, always singing.